Hello, how's everybody doing tonight? I am Ed, just Ed. No, I guess Ed O'Mara is my full name, but still, Ed. I am Ed, and it's so good to be here. So good to be here with all of you on this wonderful Thursday night at 8 o'clock, which is when we go live and drink whiskey. Now, today's stream is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit different. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and that's something that's very important to me. I wasn't sure if I was going to do this video or not, actually, because this is kind of a heavy topic, and we're kind of known for a more light, comedic take on the whiskey tube kind of stuff. But I decided, this was important enough. This was something I wanted to discuss, especially because this is mental health. We are also talking about whiskey, which is addictive. I mean, much like a lot of things, but as much as we love it for what it is also an addictive substance, and how to have a healthy relationship with that. But mostly I want to talk about the community and some of the thoughts I've been having about why I do this and why we keep doing this and why it's important. Before we get into that, though, this is still a whiskey tube stream. So I want to say hi to everybody, ask what folks are drinking. I do see Wheels is here, my man. He's asking if there's going to be no drinking driving. I mean, I'm not driving anyway. I don't know about you. Mike, Erica was feeling a little, she wasn't up for talking about this or wanting to be on the stream tonight, and I respect that decision. So yeah, she decided not to come on. That's totally her call. So no worries. Jason, how you doing? He's talking about, yes, and then we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about why, especially considering the pandemic right now with COVID and social distancing and just the myriad issues that have popped up with that. We're going to be talking about why this makes a difference. Hey, John Verstrati. I said his name wrong for months before he corrected me, John Verstrate. Trev Wilson, our fearless moderator. Whiskey Straight Al coming in from the Northern Ireland. Good to see you. Oh no, he's having some internet trouble, but glad to have you in, dude. What's everybody drinking? I poured myself a little bit of the Lagavulin Offerman edition. Yeah, so that's what I'm having tonight. Patrick Cona's in. Good to see you, buddy. Good to see you. Miss me and the glorious beard. Yeah, I had to shave it down. Now that I'm back at work, I have to wear a mask all the time, and it gets itchy, man. It gets all up in my mouth. It's not great. Jason is on the water tonight. Not a bad call. And Al's drinking Pinot Noir. There's nothing wrong with wine. Wine's hard, though. I will say that. Wine is hard. Like doing whiskey, tasting whiskey and figuring out whiskey is easier for me than trying to drink wine and figure out wine. That's a problem for me. Charles is going to bed, but he just listened to the sweet, sweet sounds of my lovely voice. Isn't that great? I also need to get a haircut. This is getting a little out of control. Yeah, we should get some face shields. Face shields would actually be the way to go. Because I get, especially now that it's very muggy and hot here in Wisconsin, all of a sudden, yeah, the face masks are just kind of miserable. Hey, the cat strength guys are here. They're mad at John. Don't be mad at John. John's good people. Jason's got some Ironwood Harbinger, the XC. Very good. Very good. Did want to talk, before we get into the heavy stuff, I did want to talk about a couple things. Oh no, did I not pull these images? I meant to pull these images. Upcoming stuff. Here we are. So I like to talk about new releases I'm excited about. That's kind of what I do on this and at the beginning of these streams. I forgot to upload the images, unfortunately. So the one I am excited about, though, I don't know if you guys have seen this. I wasn't sure if I was excited about this one or not. I was iffy on it, but it looks kind of fun. This is the new Basil Hayden's 10-year straight rye. Now, I'm not that big on older ryes usually. I do like, what was it, 2x2, the Caribbean rum cask ryes they did. I'm interested in seeing what this one brings to the table. I really am. And we actually got some in over at my store. Now, right now, I'm on a little bit of a moratorium on buying whiskey because I went a little overboard on buying whiskey once I got back to the store. We've got quite a bit. We've got a little bit of an overflow problem right now onto the floor area and over here in the closet and such. So we may have to do a little rearranging. And Erica wants me to take a break so we can drink through some of this before I buy that. But expect to see a review of that coming up on the channel a few weeks from now, once we drink through some of this other stuff and get some other reviews done. And then new Teelings. Some higher end Teelings. We're never going to see the 28 here in Wisconsin. We may see the Barbizon. I don't know if they're actually bringing the Barbizon over. That may be one we have to go down to Chicago for. But yeah, 14-year-old Barbizon bottling from Teeling. And you guys know how much I love Teeling and how much every reasonable person loves Teeling in this world. So yeah, so those are a couple of the exciting things coming up in the whiskey world. A couple new releases. So yeah, now I want to get into the mental health stuff, and especially talking about alcohol and mental health. This stream's probably going to be a little heavy. I don't want it to be depressing, and I don't want it to be exploitative, right? I don't want this to be, so heavy that it's unwatchable. And I want it to be an earnest, open discussion. And I think Vito was saying he might pop on to talk about some stuff he's dealt with regarding alcohol and mental health. So I'm going to leave a link in the chat. I want anybody who wants to pop on, chat, talk. That's what this stream is for. And like I said before, and again, if this stuff isn't something you want to watch, like if you just come here for the cutesy whiskey stuff, you just come here to talk about whiskey and drinking, that's totally fine. I understand. I know Bourbon Bites, Clifton McDaniel is going on at 8:30. He's got a gaming and whiskey stream. So feel free, if this ain't your cup of tea, pop on over. So yeah, don't worry about it. I'm not going to feel offended if you prefer to go watch something a little more lighthearted. Cool. Jason saying he wanted to find Basil's 10-year bourbon but can't find it. I haven't seen that. I think we had one bottle at the liquor store. We did a class with it. So we did a class where we just drank through basically the whole the Beam range, all the different whiskey products owned by Beam Suntory. Basil is under Beam Suntory, right? Basil, Baker's, Booker's, Jim are all under Beam Suntory, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not crazy. But yeah, so we did get to have some of that. It's good. It wasn't the shining star of the night for me, though. I do really love the new Baker's 7. That was actually really good. Al will take some whiskey off my hands. Thanks, man. You're so helpful. So let's talk a little bit. The reason I want to do this stream is psychology and mental health has always been pretty important to me. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I thought this would be a really good opportunity to talk about some things that really don't get talked about because there's a lot of social stigma around them. Not just mental illness, mostly mental illness, but also alcoholism, how alcohol relates to mental illness, the effects of, trauma and hurt and all that when it comes to alcoholism, when it comes to social fragmentation, to people not feeling like they have someone in their lives they can turn to, or feeling like they're ostracized. And that's really why I wanted to have this stream. So a little bit about me. I studied psychology in school. I worked right out of school. I worked as a psychiatric care technician at a state hospital, Winnebago State Hospital in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I then went on to work as a caseworker, helping the mentally ill people who were returning from prison coming back to the community. And then I also, after that, I worked as a caseworker at a similar program, working with men with severe trauma issues who were coming out of prison to the community. That was at the Alma Center. Oh, hey, the old man's here. Good to see you. The old man, I told him he could pop in if he wanted. He was feeling a little tired, so he's definitely coming on next week, though. The old man will be here next week because he's going into furlough, unfortunately. So he's got plenty of time. So he'll be here next week, Thursday. So yeah, so I've had a lot of experience as a mental health and as a practitioner on the mental health side, working with people with pretty dramatic mental illness. But I've also suffered from clinical depression since I was, probably diagnosed when I was 12. There's a good chance I was suffering from that, suffering from it a lot earlier in my life. Oh yeah, John Straight, the wee baby. How is he? I know I saw on Facebook he's been very colicky. I'm sorry about that. And honestly, part of the reason I was nervous to do this stream was because I knew that to have the greatest impact it would mean that I'm going to have to talk about my personal history with mental health, and my own healing story, I guess. That hasn't been something I've ever done in public. I've done it because I've had to work in mental health. I've done it with coworkers. I've done it with therapists. I've worked on this stuff with friends and family, but it's never something I was able to openly admit or talk about in public. And so honestly, coming into this stream, I was fucking terrified, you guys. Honestly, I really was. Coming on stream tonight was terrifying for me. Still am a little bit. I'm still a little scared about this. This is a kind of a scary thing to do. But yeah, I was suffering from depression for a long time. Really starting as a young man, probably about 12 years old, up until recently. Also probably some undiagnosed PTSD issues. My family, like I'm not going to try to tell other people's stories from my family because that's not my right to do, right? But a lot of people in my family have been victims of abuse. And I get a little choked up even talking about it to this day. But yeah, there's been a lot of victimhood in my family, perpetrated by members of my family, against people in my family. My grandfather was an incestuous pedophile, so as was my uncle. And yeah, there's been a history of mental illness and abuse. And for a long time, that was something that was hard for me to admit, both because it was hard for me to grapple with the idea that I was mentally ill or, mentally unwell. And it was also hard for me to grapple with the idea that I was descended from people who could do that kind of horrible shit. Yeah. So for a long time, I was very, very angry. I think that's something that people don't necessarily understand about depression, right? Depression is not just being sad. In fact, you don't. Depression is different for different people, right? Depression is different for different people. So some people are grief-stricken, some people are morose. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. For me, depression really was a lot of self-hatred, a lot of self-hatred, both because of what I was feeling and because of the people, my family, the people who had done these things. John, thank you for talking about that. I appreciate that. You know, and that's the thing. I don't necessarily. I'm not coming out here to look for, you know, sympathy or anything like that. But I think the problem is that we don't talk about these things. We don't really talk about these things. We live in shame because of how hurt we are and how little we want to open up to others, how scared we are that people will judge us. My kid's sister, Eileen, has always been way more brave about this than I am. She has always, she suffered abuse as well. And I don't think she would have a problem with me talking about that because she's come to terms with it and she's talked about it. And you know, she's talked about it a lot more, you know, and I think she's come to terms with it better than I did. I think for me, what I did was I got very, very angry as a young man, and I would get drunk and I'd get in fistfights. That was kind of an outlet for me. Mike is saying it wasn't my fault. I know. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. You were saying one of your grandfathers was like that. I don't believe it was my fault or my sister's fault. Nothing like that. Not what I'm saying for sure. But I think it's hard for people to understand that. Even if you haven't suffered abuse or trauma, if you're mentally ill, you feel ashamed of yourself. You feel like you're not doing what other people are able to do, right? You feel as though the world seems to have some secret, right? That they're able to operate and be totally fine. And for some reason, you never really learned how to do that. And you feel like it's your fault, right? You feel like there's something intrinsically wrong with the way you're acting. And for some reason, no one else seems to be suffering that way. When in reality, there's a lot of people who are suffering similarly or in different kinds of mental health. You know, the incidence of general anxiety disorder is incredibly high. Depression is high. There's people who are dealing with psychosis, psychotic disorders. There's a lot of people who are suffering in silence, and if we don't talk about these things, no one knows that there are other people who are dealing with it, right? If we don't open up and tell people, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, this is how I'm feeling, then you feel isolated, right? You feel like you're the only one who's fucked up in this way, when really it's you're not fucked up, right? You are a great, wonderful human being. You just don't know that. You know, you wouldn't feel like you had to hide a cancer diagnosis. You wouldn't feel like you had to hide that you had the flu, right? I mean, COVID, obviously, you don't want to spread it to other people. I get that. I mean, I understand you don't want, there is a stigma about like passing it on to other people. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we treat physical illness different from how we treat mental illness. Mental illness is considered, there's too often mental illness is considered an issue with the person, morally, personality-wise, whatever. Hey, Donald and Emily, good to see you guys. Glad you came in. And you know, when I was working at Alma, we had a saying. Well, we had a couple sayings. One is that hurt people hurt people. Individuals who have suffered, who are suffering, who don't have the opportunity to let go of their pain, end up harming others, right? And the idea, the other thing was that any pain that is not transformed is transferred, right? If you don't work on your own pain, if you don't change your pain, you're going to put that pain onto others. You are going to hurt other people because you can't contain that pain inside you any longer, right? And I think I did that for many years. I ruined relationships because of how I was feeling. I got in physical fights. I got way too drunk way too often. And that's something we see a lot with people I work with, people who went to prison. I would say 95% of the men I worked with were physically abused as children. And that's in the general population. And I would say at least 50% of the men, and probably close to 100% of the women, were sexually abused, who are in the prison system right now. Because when you have suffered something so horrible and so evil, you end up taking out that pain on others. Or you end up taking out, you end up hurting yourself, which you see a lot of that too. That's kind of why I started thinking about I started thinking about this community and how important this community is to me. Whiskey Straight Out was saying, I genuinely believe that most people don't understand mental health issues until it happens directly to them. Yeah. I mean, and there's a reason to that, right? We teach kids about viruses and germs. We tell them to wash their hands. We tell them, this is what happens when grandma got sick or grandpa died, right? We talk to them about physical illness. We don't, until we absolutely have to, we don't talk to kids about mental illness, right? There's not you learn about germs, what? Kindergarten, first grade. As soon as they're able to teach about germs and how to protect yourself, you're good to go. But we don't talk to kids about what happens when you're feeling fucked up for no reason. I remember talking to my mom when I was a kid, and I would tell her I would just have these long bouts of intense sadness for no reason. And I didn't know why. I felt like I had to come up with a reason for why I was feeling sad, even though there was no reason, right? Yeah. Then that's fucked up. The problem is, and John actually brings up a great point. Like in the family tree, there is a genetic component to a lot of these diseases, right? I mean, schizophrenia has an incredibly high rate of genetic transference, generation to generation, as does depression. But then the trauma of the illness and the traumas we face every day really do exacerbate and cause even more issues mentally. And that's true because people feel isolated. People can't talk about their illness. They're stigmatized because of their illness. That's because people suffer abuse and trauma and horrifying things, war, car accidents, whatever, horrible traumas that exacerbate existing issues. And we don't deal with them, right? it's not an easy thing. Couple of things. Alice saying he was as a police officer many years, dealt with people with mental issues to varying degrees every shift. I didn't fully understand until it happened to me after a trauma. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a hard thing to understand from the outside looking in. None of us can really understand how another person thinks and feels, right? Until you're in that place. Emily is saying, as a disabled woman, gotta say, her experience, the overcoming narrative is bullshit and contributes to the problem. Your normal should be your most functional, not what looks good or makes others happy. Yeah, I agree with that. That's a tough thing of how much of our normal is based on what makes other people feel comfortable, right? I mean, that's the whole idea of ableism, right? Why do we treat people in wheelchairs differently? Why do we treat the mentally ill or the intellectually disabled differently? Not just because there are I mean, if there are functional issues, sure. I mean, yeah, you have to try to work through those. But on some level, the real issue is that society doesn't like to look at these issues. They don't want to deal with people who are dealing with these issues because it's hard and it's scary and it's weird and it makes people feel uncomfortable. Right? It's easier just to repress. That's fucked up. Andrew Kelly is saying that in Florida right now, there was a mandated 8 hours of mental health lessons across all grade levels. That's really good. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Donald Rance, yeah, Donald, I know he works. He's a frontline guy with people with schizophrenia. And yeah, he's saying he still doesn't understand what is going on with them, despite knowing their histories and seeing them for 15 years, 5 days a week. Yeah. And Dustin actually brings up a good point. People are who they are at this moment, and you can't change them. They're a result of genetics and their life experience. Yeah. I mean, I think I put it a little different way. I truly do believe that everyone in this world is doing the very best they can. Because if they were capable of being better people, they would be. Or if they were capable of, whatever it is. I think especially in my work where we're working with people who are violent, domestic violence in particular, there's a lot of, it's very, the standard idea for a long time has been to say, what is wrong with them, right? What is fucked up about them? Why are they so fucked up? Why are you so evil? Why are you so awful? When really, I mean, it's their life experience, the way they came up, what happened to them, that is making them act this way. If their life experience had been different, if their life experience had given them the capability to not be violent, to not do this shit, they wouldn't be doing it. They lack the capability. That was what the whole point of my work was, to work with guys to heal the pain so that they had the capability to be better people. Once you can get someone to understand the pain of others and to work through their stuff, you can get them to be capable to make these changes. It doesn't happen overnight. I think people want a quick fix. I think people want a quick fix, and they want to be able to logic their way through it, right? They want to be able to argue with a person who's mentally ill, who's suffering, who's you know, or who's violent or whatever it is. You know, they want to be able to logic that away. You can't do it. It's not a logical thing, right? It's not a logical thing. I don't think there's ever been in my work, I don't think most therapists work, you don't you the practitioner, you the professional, you don't heal anybody. You give the other people the opportunity to heal themselves. Because it's not you don't have, I don't think, I think there's been a long history of therapists or psychologists, psychiatrists thinking we can medicate away a problem or we can just work away a problem with just blunt force. And I am on medication. I'm on a very high dose of an antidepressant, and it's incredibly helpful for me. Don't get me wrong. I love that shit. That shit's great. But at the same time, it wasn't until I found people who gave me the opportunity to work on my own trauma, my mental health, and to understand why I was acting the way I was acting and being such a shithead, then I really had an opportunity to change. You know what I mean? That was when I took things together and I gained the capability to heal. I think that's really what we're talking about, is that people don't want to be fucking mentally ill, right? Right? No one wants to feel like this. No one wants to hear voices. No one wants to be anxious. You know, no one wants to have obsessive thoughts. It's fucked. You know what I mean? That's awful. But when you're stuck in that place, when you feel like there's no way out, when you feel as though this is all you're ever going to be and nothing's ever going to change, you start to feel as though the only way to fucking change it is, I mean, you end up, that's when people start thinking about suicide. I know that's when I did. You know, you feel, or, you know, other shit, whatever it is, drugs, alcohol. I mean, that's why we're talking about this too. Alcohol is a great way to stop feeling like a complete shithead. Sorry, I went off on a tangent. We're all guessing what we should do. There's no instruction manual. Yeah, no doubt. Al is saying he saw and dealt with and experienced some awful shit on many levels. Death, depravity, near death, geez. Always found it exhilarating. Then when that near-death experience becomes more real in a high-speed crash, resulting in chronic illness, chronic pain, and complete changes in life. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I forgot I can click on these. This is something that you're absolutely right. That's the fucked up thing. Ableism is a real form of prejudice, right? How many times? I mean, and this is applicable to physical illnesses. People treat people with a physical disability as less smart just because of the physical disability. Got nothing to do. It has no effect on their brain, right? But if you have a physical disability, it's assumed that you must not be that smart. It's completely fucking crazy. Similarly, if you see a person who acts strange, like if you see, for example, a lot of homeless people suffer from mental illness. You see a guy on a bus stop acting weird, you know, or talking to himself, people avoid him like it's like he's contagious or like he's dangerous. The truth is that most people with mental illness are more of a danger to themselves than they will ever be to anyone else. And they're far more likely to be the victims of violence by others than they are to ever harm anyone else. But for some reason, we still assume that they are incredibly, incredibly dangerous. Yeah. Hey, Affordable Whiskey Review. I'm sorry I didn't shout you out earlier. Glad for coming in. Glad you came in. Yeah. Man, I'm sorry, Al. That's incredibly fucked up. I'm really sorry to hear about that. And that's a whole different, I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine what it's like to live with that. I'm sorry, man. But I'm glad you're here talking about it. I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody who's chiming in, actually. I do like Dustin's comment, though. That's cute. Yeah, Vito, actually, please, I would love to have people come on and talk. I've talked for a half hour. I did not intend for this to go on quite as long as I thought it would be. Hey, Sir Tannen, good to see you, buddy. Vito wants to hop on in. This is an open table discussion. Anybody who wants to hop in can. I've got nothing to do. I know I just started ranting. I went way off the rails and just started talking about a lot of different stuff. So sorry about that. I didn't even really talk about alcohol, really. But I think I'm getting a feeling we can work that in later. Vito? All right. Well, it's just Butthead right now. That's okay. We'll see if he pops on in a second. I think it is. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, sorry. I have a weird setup now, so like I have to have like a separate thing. I'll figure it out eventually.
Okay. No worries.
But yeah, so I love that you're doing this, and the whole time you were talking, I was getting nervous, and I usually don't get really nervous when I'm about to talk about mental awareness and stuff like this, because I do it any chance I get. That was my release from my mental stigma of depression and anxiety. So backstory for me was, as a young kid, and being as small as I am, imagine me even younger, right? I was a very tiny kid, and I grew up further than everyone else that went to my elementary school. So, and in my area there was no kids my age. So I lived fairly secluded from everybody else. I didn't gain any real social skills till high school. So as a young kid, I was always, verbally bullied, nothing physical, but a lot of verbal bullying. And it really I wasn't diagnosed with depression until my mid-20s, but I definitely could have probably gone earlier, but it didn't hit until then fully. But that bullying kind of put it in my head that I would never be good enough. I'm not as cool as, the other kids, like the kids in hockey, and the kids that, the cool kids and the kids that go out after school and hang out and go biking together, while I have to go, 30 minutes the opposite direction. And then in high school, it got more exacerbated because I ended up lucking out by becoming friends with a lot of like really great people that I'm still extremely close with to this day. But at the same time, those people were what I perceived as much more accomplished in life than I was. And I spent all my time trying to get to what I thought was the ideal sort of state of being, right? And constantly trying to outperform what I am, or what I was, I should say. And then I was 26. I was in the middle of a fairly intense relationship that I thought was like, that was it for me. Like I was going to propose to this girl. And all of a sudden, those feelings were getting to a peak. My best friend was getting married and I was in the bridal party. So I had stuff on that end to take care of. I had my girlfriend that I was, working through some things with. And then my other good friend asked me to walk her down the aisle and be the MC at her wedding, all within like a 3-week period.
Sure.
Right. And everything that I had experienced up until that point of like the bullying, the idea that I wasn't good enough compared to the people around me, and kind of came to a boil, and it became, I'm not good enough for this girl. I'm not good enough for my friend to be part of his wedding. Who am I to walk this girl down the aisle for her wedding? And how am I going to talk, be an MC for a wedding of a couple hundred people? And that summer, I walk around at about 140, 145 pounds usually. By the time the weddings, everything finished, by mid-September, I was down to 118 pounds.
Oh, geez.
And after the second wedding, after I walked my friend, so my buddy's wedding went off without a hitch. My friend's wedding that I walked down the aisle went off without a hitch. The day after her wedding, my body shut down. Like, it was just, that's it. Like, you are spent. I spent the majority of the previous X amount of years under mental stress. But then that last 3 months just wrecked me completely, like stripped me down to the, like, where I had lost 20 pounds. I was deathly sort of skinny for my frame. And I had zero will to do anything. I spent all my time on the couch. Like, I could not get up. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink. I could drink. And that's what then we're going to talk about alcohol finally.
Yeah. I know.
And I started to drink heavily, not to the point where I'd be sick or I would do stupid things, but that was my escape for probably about 4 months. And when I was diagnosed near the end of September, early October, I think it was, where I finally was like, I told my father, like, I can't go to work. I'm done. I can't do this. I need to go see like Dr. Dave, like my general practitioner. Like, I need to know what's going on. Like, there's something wrong. And that goes against everything, the stigma that, I know women feel this too, but for guys, I feel like it's something else entirely. Just like women have to deal with sort of this ideal body image.
Yeah.
Men have to deal with the old school, well, you're a man, suck it up.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And that's pretty much what I was trying to do, is I'm going to suck it up. And I sucked it up for such a long period of time that I finally hit rock bottom. Yeah. And so when I finally got evaluated and I was prescribed medication, I was taking the medication, but still drinking heavily. And when I say drinking heavy, like, I was drinking like 6-7 pints a night, couple of cocktails throughout the day, all while on medication. And if you're on antidepressants and sleep medication, drinking alcohol is one of the worst things that you can do.
Yeah.
And I found, and at the time I had moved in with one of my best friends, because he was living alone. And I just couldn't be in my house. I couldn't be in the same house with my parents and my younger brother. I felt so insecure and defeated because my girlfriend broke up with me when I was evaluated as well. So that was like additional, just like I thought like we were gonna get through anything together, this and that, and then she just like out. So that was fairly traumatizing. And so my doctor, when he would ask me like how I'm doing, I had multiple check-ins for the first month with him a week. So like 2 check-ins a week for 4 weeks, and then it was once a week, and then once a month. But for the first little bit, when I was living with my buddy and we were going out every night drinking, and he was trying to console me as a good friend does, let's go out, let's have a drink, let's forget about everything and this and that. He found out, and he's like, "Oh, what have you been keeping yourself busy with?" Like, "Oh, I'm going out with some friends and having a couple drinks at night." And he laid into me, and his father was in the delivery room with my mother when she gave birth to me. So like he's known me my whole life. So he's fairly candid with me. So he's like, "You need to fucking stop. Like you can't be doing this and that. Like you need to find something healthier to do." So it took a bit of time, but I found, because of the whiskey community that we're part of, I found the right balance of consumption. And I wasn't a big whiskey drinker, but the fact that like, because it's so strong, you only drink a little bit and you're good, versus like putting back multiple beers, which one isn't that great for you because of all the carbonation, but also looks like that it's just that amount of liquid is not good. This makes you stop and appreciate what you're putting into your body. And so my alcohol consumption went from like multiple beers a night to like almost no beers at all. Like I almost cut out beer completely, and like maybe one, like an ounce or so every day or every other day. And it was that shift of alcohol consumption for me that kind of was a turning point, because it put me more in control in my most susceptible moments of the day, which is at night. And
for sure.
At night, when your mind starts to wind down, not when your mind starts to wind down. Sorry, reverse. When things around you,
things are winding down
your mind shoots like a fucking rocket.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And under the influence of alcohol plus medication, that's just a terrible. Like I was having hallucinations, thoughts of suicide, and like all these nonsense things in my head, and I didn't know how to convey any of this. And it wasn't until my alcohol consumption went down that I started to talk about what I'm feeling with people. Sure. And I'm glad that I started doing that right away, that I found reprieve, I think that's the right word, or solace in the fact that I'm sharing outwardly my feelings, because I found me sharing those things allowed me to be the Vito that I was and that I feel most comfortable with. And Emily was saying it, I think it was Emily that was mentioning it earlier, that everyone kind of puts on a brave face and tries to be the person that people want you to be, instead of being comfortable with who you are. And I found, and everyone deals with this differently, I found for me what works best is me telling you that I deal with something, and then me just continuing on being the Vito that is like silly and sort of tries to be outgoing and dopey and stupid, and instead of being like more like a somber down version, kind of, aged, and I've gone through some stuff, and we should be really more careful about stuff we say and this and that, and I didn't want to live my life on eggshells, and that's how I perceive it. And like I said, it's not for anybody that I'm not putting anyone how at one specific person or any amount of people deal with their anxiety, depression, or mental health issues. Is this I loved being able to just openly talk about things. And in return, I found that you see how many people actually deal with stuff. Because when you start talking about it, for the most part, it makes other people around you a bit more comfortable with them opening up.
Oh,
and then you have a really good open dialogue, and you share some stuff, and it gets a little bit, hey, Eric, and you get a bit more, you find a bit more ease of mind knowing that you're not the only person going through this, even though that you know that you're not the only person going through this. It's that additional affirmation that there are people around you that now know what you've gone through, know what you're dealing with, and are there if you ever need a safety net.
For sure.
And the safety net is the biggest thing for people, because a lot of people don't have that, and that's where, you know, a lot of tragedies happen.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think that's, I mean, the main thing that kept me from killing myself when I was in the deepest part of it. I mean, one, I had a therapist, and one, my ma made me promise that I would never harm myself.
Yeah.
You know, she made me sit down and promise her that I would never ever kill myself, because I knew, because it would break her heart.
Yeah.
I think that's really the only thing. And when I was the deepest in it, that was what kept me from doing myself in.
That's really great. Like, I love my parents to death. But I didn't get any soft sentiments. I got a lot of, you'll be fine, you're great, you'll get through this. You know, I deal with it, you'll be fine. I didn't get what I wanted from them.
Sure.
And even to this day, like, I have a hard time talking to them about it. Which is why I think I ended up wanting to talk about it openly with people around, other people, to see if it's just me or if it's like my parents.
Sure.
And you know, my parents, like I said, I love my parents and my parents love me. It's just, we were never emotionally close like that. We weren't like, oh, I love you, V, like I love you every night, or, you know, great job. Like it wasn't. I wasn't raised in that sort of environment, which I don't think I would have. I don't want to say it was detrimental, but looking back on it now, having dealt with depression, anxiety, I kind of wish I did, because I didn't. It left me without an outlet, which I feel like is a lot of people's first resource is your parents. And hey, Mike, sorry, I didn't want. I wanted to kind of finish my thought there. But
no, you should.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I think you should always try, is to test the waters with your parents if you're not comfortable with it. And this is for like people of all ages, but a lot of young people that if you're watching, or if you're watching the replay or anything like that, or even like when I talk to my younger cousins about stuff like this, because, you know, they're starting to get into high school now, and so like I'm ready, and always with like telling them, hey, listen, if you ever need to talk to anybody, come talk to me. Like, my phone's always on for you guys, and this and that. Like, I'm just trying to put myself out there for people to be an outlet. So yeah,
I do want to thank Emily for this comment. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Vito. I didn't.
Yeah,
want to
no, absolutely not.
Okay, I'm sorry. I really don't want to interrupt anyone on this stream. So if I ever do, let me know. I do want to thank her so much for this, and I think Emily, you know, speaking. I believe she's a person who has a physical disability, and that's not something I know, and that's not something I can understand. So hearing your thoughts and your perspective on this is really important, and I really appreciate you coming on the stream and talking with us. So that's really awesome.
Her second comment there, where she's saying it's not safe for people to do that. Some people use your pain against you to either control you or make themselves feel better. And there's no good at least for me, I can't form into words how upsetting that is. That people don't feel safe, and I know there are people that don't feel safe. Doesn't kind of gloss over me. It's just so sad, and if people don't feel safe, there should be avenues, and that's one of the reasons why I try to talk about it as often as I do when out in public and like meeting people, is that at the very least, I know what I'm getting myself into by putting that out there. If even one person that doesn't feel safe about it feels somewhat comforted in me expressing what I deal with, then that's a win. And if they feel comfortable at that point to talk to a fairly new person about their troubles, and that one person, that random stranger, being that, that saving grace, that kind of like, you were there for me. Nobody else in my life was. I felt lost, but you came up and were talking about it, or I saw you talking about it on a video or in a big group over there, and I just want to thank you. And is it okay if we talk? It's a long shot, because the chances of something like that happening, but the more I feel like the more I talk about it, the greater those percentages go up.
Mm. Sure.
And and I think I can probably only do that because I've been talking about it for such a long period of time. And not to put myself on a pedestal, it's just like I'm just extremely comfortable talking about it to random people. Like I meet people traveling all the time, and I was like, oh, like, this and that, blah blah. Oh yeah, like I deal with depression, blah blah. It doesn't come up quite like that, but it always ends up coming up. And everyone I meet traveling always has a story, and they're either traveling because they're going through something to escape, and this is their escape from what they're dealing with, because they can't talk about it. But then they find a person to talk about it with. And I guess, Emily, if you ever need to talk, like, hit me up. Like, I have no issues lending an ear. So that's with everybody. Yeah, that's with everybody.
No, Vito, you started covering it when I was trying to get in there, when you had mentioned that you had somebody to talk to, and that's one of the biggest problems that people have, is they either don't have that person or any lifeline, or they don't feel like they have that lifeline.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter how close that you are with someone, and sometimes when you are going through it, maybe your parents are not the best people to talk to, because they could be, who knows, maybe they spark something else. But we had from my, which I know that but for a few years is dealing with wife's health issues, and she passed away last May, and everything leading up to that and going on, you try to deal with it, and you try to, well, I can handle it because you have things that you have to take care of, and life has to go on, and so on and so forth. But one of the one of the worst things you can do is try to live inside your own head. And in doing that, it's not a good place, because the only person responding to you is the person that's going to give you the wrong answer.
Yep.
And that's yourself.
Yeah.
And after she had passed away, I was trying to figure out what to do. I had very close group of friends, guy friends that, we can laugh and cry and talk about anything, but we're spread across the country. So it's really hard to get together to have that physical contact and conversation, which is really important. That the physical touch is important to somebody who needs help too. Even just a hand on an arm or hand on a shoulder. But I finally did relent and went to talk to somebody who didn't know me, but was also very nice. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got, because when people, they know you've been through something. And ours, my wife was very big in the community, and a lot of people knew her, and there's a lot of people that knew that she had passed away. But when they would run into you, sometimes obviously fear, because they, like you said, they know something's wrong. So should they talk to you or not? But there's, that fear thing. But then also when people do talk to you, sometimes they look at you and stare at you like, you gonna do it? You gonna do something right now? Something gonna happen? You know, it's like they're just waiting, like it's a, you know, like it's a fucking clown show. But having a person that also said it's okay to say no. You know, it's okay if you're uncomfortable and you're anxious, get invited somewhere and you don't want to do it. It's okay to say no. And I found myself more than once pulled in front of somebody's house. I was invited there and I'm like, I cannot go through this, and just turn around and drive away. And I felt totally fine doing that because it causes more stress and anxiety. And unless you can be happy and unless you can find something small to focus on, or at least for me, you can't change what's bad and you can't change everything. But if you could have something to control, no matter how small, and you can get through that one little thing, you know, this is, you know, the daunting task of, you know, going through a loved one's stuff. Well, you can't go through everything, but you can go through this little bit in front of you and tackle everything that you do in small bits. But again, without a lifeline or without a person or people that can support you, that aren't going to judge you, it's very hard.
Just for a second, I do want to thank Emily again. I don't mean to bring up your business in the chat. If you don't want me to, please let me know. I'm sorry, but I appreciate that she told me she prefers the term. She doesn't like the first person language. So I want to say I'm sorry. I didn't know, and I appreciate you letting me know. So thanks, Emily.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. Is kind of approaching someone and expecting a certain reaction. And again, I've been extremely fortunate in all of my encounters, all my conversations. I don't know what happens afterwards, but I can only attest to what is happening in the moment. And I've been very fortunate that I've never encountered any sort of weirdness or, like, you know, awkwardness, even amongst, like, Patrick mentioned it. He's like, a lot of the problems talking to friends is you're worried you'll be viewed differently. And my friends were the first people that I told. Well, obviously I told my father because he had to drive me to the doctors for my evaluation, and because I had like no strength in my body. And then I told my now ex, who broke up with me a week later, and then I told my friends. I hit up one by one. Hey, I just got evaluated. Hey, I just got this and that. And right, all of them, all four of them was like, what do you need from me? Like, my one friend said, you're moving in with me. He's like, you're coming to live with me for a month. Like, you just escape everything, come live with me. And so I was extremely fortunate. But that's one thing is, I guess I think you have to be aware of the stigma, but also aware that there are going to be those few people in your life that will be there for you, and that's how you eliminate the toxicity in your life, right? And the less toxic people you have around you, the healthier you're going to be mentally.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it's not worth burning calories on it.
Yeah, well,
you know what I mean. If they're not going to be there for you, maybe why burn the calories?
Yeah, unfortunately, I burnt quite a few calories. I wish I had taken a picture. Like, I was falling out of my jeans by the time I was I went from a 30 waist to like easily a 26. And imagine, like, you guys have met me in person. Like, yeah.
I do want to bring up something. I know you were talking about Vito. You were talking about being bullied and then feeling as though you weren't good enough to take part in the weddings, or you weren't good enough to do this or that.
Yeah.
We do talk about something we talked about a lot at the Alma Center, was that, we called it like victim consciousness. The idea is that you start to believe that the wrongs that were done to you deserved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You start to think that you deserved the things that people have done to you, you deserve them, and you deserve to continue to have bad things done to you, you know. And that kind of shame reaction leads you to really, I know for me, it led to both, you know, not taking care of myself and not looking after myself, but also just lashing out at others. You know, I think you can be very aware of how awful things were, and you logically know that it wasn't right, but at the same time, you feel so ashamed of yourself and you feel so bad about yourself, you lash out. Like that's the fucked up thing. You feel so bad about yourself, but if anyone were to tell you that, for me, if anyone were to tell me that I was in a bad way, I would get so angry at them. I didn't want to hear it.
You
know?
Thank you for bringing that up. Sorry, continue if I'm
no, please.
Thank you for bringing that, because that's something that I completely forgot to mention, is that while I appreciate that there are a lot of people that have found antidepressants of how whatever dosage or brand you take, that it gives you a lot of it benefits you greatly. For me, and I wasn't taking like heavy dosage, like I was taking like kind of like a beginner's amount. I think it was like 10 milligrams, I think. But anyways, so I was taking antidepressants and sleeping pills for the first 8 months of my diagnosis and my evaluation. And in between all the good that I was kind of trying to infuse into my life, I went traveling. I made a couple of new friends, obviously with the whiskey tribe and everything. But I was a different person. Like my friends were telling me, like, dude, like, are you okay? Like, I know you're going through some stuff, but like I was lashing out, and I would lash out, not realize it until I got into my car or the stuff around me was quiet, and I was like, I would reflect, because your mind goes haywire. It was like, wow, like what the shit, like how, like what an asshole I am. Like what a loser I am to these people that are trying to understand you and trying to be there for you. And this was after like my alcohol consumption took a nosedive, and I was back at the gym and I was doing my traveling. Like I was in a healthy place physically, but for me, the antidepressants were making me like have these mood swings. And it wasn't until about 8 or 9 months after I started taking them that I just need to stop. I can't take these anymore. And now when I kind of look back on that period of my life, I remember very little. It's almost like I was living a separate life during the time that I was taking them. And it's weird thinking back, because a lot of stuff happened in those 8 months. And if you were to ask me any details, like I went to Europe. I know I went to Amsterdam, Brussels, Munich, and Scotland. And I did Glasgow and Edinburgh and Skye. I remember the Scotland trip, the Scotland portion of the trip more, because I ran out of antidepressants by Munich. And so I wasn't taking any medication for the 4 days that I was in Scotland. But that's what I remember most vividly during that time, because I went through my antidepressants faster than I thought I would. And when I got back home, I had them at the ready. And that's probably the biggest sort of point, like spot in my head that's like fuck this shit. Like fuck depression, fuck anxiety. I'm okay with it now. Like I have no ill will towards the diagnosis towards obviously it's unfortunate, but it's something that everyone deals with in some sort of level. So it's like, okay, fine, whatever. I hate the fact that I was on the medication that made me forget like my life. Now I get through it by talking to people and a good amount of cannabis here and there.
Well, and I think that's interesting because I mean, let's see if Whiskey Al, if this is working. I'm sorry, Al, if you can hear us.
He's having some issues with. I think.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's got a new setup, and I guess it's not quite working right now. If we can get him in, hopefully. I don't know how much longer I'm going to keep doing the stream, because I do have to work in the morning. But we can keep going for a little while. I do want to, Don Holland. I think a lot of people are going through challenging times right now.
Yeah. Well, especially now. Like this is. Especially now. Yeah. Like forget on like, and this is a talking point between me and my roommate. Forget the unfortunate and somewhat unnecessary deaths that are occurring right now because of COVID. But just think about the amount of deaths and mental health issues that are going to be spurred from all of this.
Sure.
From the layoffs, the furloughing, the financials, the economy. Forget stimulating the economy. The government is going to have to pump in billions of dollars into mental health awareness and programs, because this is it's not going to be pretty.
Right.
And it's gonna be really, really tough. And Don said it's like if listening to people talk about stuff like this is beneficial, then perfect. Like, I think this is probably one of the big things that Ed wanted to accomplish here, is just an outlet and sort of a group discussion and listening party to just kind of make sure that we're all here together, and making everyone aware of mental issues. Speaking
of which, I do want to say, anybody in the chat right now is happy to hop on. I'm happy for you to hop on if you're up for it. You can also obviously put stuff in the chat. I'm trying to throw stuff up on screen as it comes in.
I tend to talk a lot. Sorry.
It's all right. I do want to say, I always am nervous. I know people do have adverse reactions to antidepressants in particular. People can have some serious side effects, and I don't want to discount any of that. I'm always nervous. I know that was something that I had a lot of problems with my clients, is that there is as much as there's a stigma against seeking help with therapy, there's sometimes even more of a stigma with using medication. I think a lot of people are very scared of gaining weight, of not being able to perform sexually, whatever particular one, or if you're, for example, like bipolar, some people are scared that it's going to make them lose that energy. And that's, I would encourage you, anybody who's suffering from this, go to it, like, talk to your doctor, find a doctor you trust, who you feel like you're comfortable talking to, and be willing to try medication. If you have adverse effects, obviously you shouldn't be taking them, but I think there's a lot of fear about it, and I can understand it, but I know from my experience, they've been incredibly helpful. I think a good thing to do is to not be afraid of them, but to see how your body reacts to either the dosage or the brand, because I know there are some brands that are a bit more tuned for. I don't know the exact medical thing, but there are different brands of antidepressants. So I know some work for some people, some don't work for other people. So to find out, my big thing was when I got off of them was essentially depression. A lot of it's chemical, right? It's your serotonin and dopamine levels. Your body can't produce your mood regulators as
as efficiently, or if at all. And that's a big thing. Your receptors shut down, and that spirals you. It's not the cause, but it eliminates your body's ability to sort of bring yourself back up a little bit, right? So, and with a lot of antidepressants, they try to put in serotonin into your system, essentially giving your body what very little serotonin your body's producing is essentially telling your body, hey, don't worry about producing anymore. You're getting your dosage from an exterior source. Your body's pretty smart that way, right? So if they say like a lot of people take testosterone for weight building, weightlifting. Well, you take too much of that, your body is essentially going to shut down your testosterone producing organs, and that's why a lot of bodybuilders end up having smaller genitalia when they go off the steroids and the testosterone, because your body's not producing it anymore naturally because it's been receiving it artificially. Same thing with a lot of antidepressants. And that's why a lot of people relapse and have an issue when they go off of it after so many years, or even after months of heavy usage, is that your body goes into withdrawal and you become even worse off because your body's now not used to producing any of those chemicals. Yep. So when I went off of it, off of my antidepressants, I made sure that I had something there that can at least stimulate my body to produce elevated levels of serotonin, and that's cannabis for me. Cannabis is a great means of serotonin and dopamine stimulus. And however you want to, it was CBD or the female cannabis leaves and stuff like that. It's not recommended. Like I'm not recommended to anyone, but for me, that was what I decided to supplement because there were no negatives. There are a lot less negatives to that that I saw for me personally than continuing on with the antidepressants. I know it's harder for a lot of people that in states where the states are still it's not an option at all because it's not legal. It's still illegal and stuff like that. But it is an option for treatment for some things, and for me, it definitely helped in the early stages of me dealing with it. And now I'm not, I haven't had any cannabis in barring Monday night. It was Monday night that I had a little weed ball, and then before that, the last time I had gotten high was back in February. So it's not like I even need it anymore. I used it to sort of get my body kind of pumping itself back up and sort of getting my levels back up to a somewhat normal sort of level. And definitely definitely seems to have helped me personally, because I don't need to rely on it anymore. I don't need to be on antidepressants. I still go through those spells of, oh shit, well, this reminded me of my ex-girlfriend because of the whole situation of my breakup happened when I got diagnosed. So that trauma kind of carries through everything. So if I get reminded of my ex, it's like, oh shit, well, fuck. You get that chill, you get that sort of a weak feel. I get weak and chilly, and I get a little sad and nervous. And then I've kind of learned to snap out of it really quickly. I kind of block out thoughts and this and that, and I kind of redirect my attention to something more stimulating, and it helps me get over that very quickly. So I haven't been cured because there is no cure, but I found my triggers. I found what works best to bring me off of the ledge. And if things get really sad for me, I know what I can take to just let the storm pass. I'll be good in the morning.
Okay. Hey, I'm gonna go back to the chat. No, I'm going to jump back in the chat in case someone else wants to get in. But I do want to say, Ed, seriously, thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing this. This is it's a good show. And
thanks, man. I'm glad you came on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's great, and hopefully a lot of people get a benefit out of it. So
Thank you, man.
All right. Thank you again.
Take it easy, Mike.
I do want to hear from you, Donald. I do want to point out
I'm going to be quiet.
couple of things. Yeah, we do. Me and you have been talking a lot, so we should take a step back. I do want to point out one thing. Most drugs you're going to take these days don't actually give you norepinephrine or serotonin directly. Most drugs you're going to take today, Generation 3 drugs, are going to be norepinephrine or serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
Yeah, SSRIs. Yeah.
So yeah, they're actually going, your body, if they take the natural stuff your body is producing, and they're just going to make the body keep it going longer.
Okay, so that wasn't what I was taking then. So
yeah, so there you still do have withdrawal from, no doubt. If you stop taking them immediately, like just cold turkey, you will definitely withdraw from them. Definitely. So like if you're ever going to stop taking any kind of medicine, mental health medicine, do it under supervision of a doctor.
Agreed.
But anyway, Donald, please, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, I mean, well done. Well done on doing this, because, you know, I'm living in these trenches every day with folks suffering with these issues. And for me, it's quite interesting because I've never really had a major mental health episode in my life. I've always been helping other people deal with theirs, whether it be their schizophrenia, you know, becoming worse, be it their delusions, whatever. And it's really taught me a lot that the stigma that society has on the mental health issues is actually worse than the mental health issue itself. Because, case in point, you were mentioning, you know, a homeless guy at the bus stop, you know, behaving, you know, what people would term crazy and talking to himself. I had a discussion with one of our residents last week, and of course he was talking to himself. I mean, he's heard voices since a Van Halen concert in the early 1980s when Van Halen was all of a sudden just singing to him. He remembers the exact moment. And I said to him, well, it sucks that people look at you differently, but look at it this way. I'm going to bring you an earpiece for a cell phone. And when you go down the street to the store, put it in and see if people treat you any differently. He came back and said to me, he's like, wow, people didn't stare at me. And I'm like, well, what you can do then is, if you're really, you know, conscious about how people are looking at you, wear the earpiece. It sucks that you have to, but if it makes you feel better and helps you get on with daily life, then by all means do it.
For sure.
I mean, it's amazing, right? You would assume by now, you know, that we wouldn't have these issues with the stigma and everything, but we're still battling it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I do think, I just want to bring up Wheels' comments here.
Yeah.
He was talking about, you know, the lack of mobility is really hard for him. I mean, that obviously makes things harder mentally as well. I mean, yeah. You're a brave dude, man. I appreciate you talking about it. I know he also mentioned, you know, just having to be inside so much was really hard. Yep. I know part of my problem when I was super depressed was I wasn't actually getting enough vitamin D. Yeah. I would just lie inside all day. I just slump over on the bed and just not move. And my vitamin D levels crashed, and it just made me even more sick.
It's amazing, the small things. Sunlight and sleep.
Yep.
Sunlight and sleep are so damn important. And
yep, you'll get no argument from me. I mean, some of our folks also have mobility issues, because with mental health comes, you know, physical health issues as well, quite often. And it can be really rough in the winter on them, because, you know, they do want to go outside. You know, they do like to go out and maybe go to the dollar store and blow $20 or do those kinds of normal activities that you and I would take for granted, but they're unable to. So, you know, trying to help them through that is often quite a challenge. And the only way to do it is really, number one, don't patronize them and be like, oh, you know, oh, I understand. No, you don't.
Mm.
I say that to all of the, students that come in. You don't know what it's like to be them, so stop patronizing and stop pretending. Number two, shut up and listen, because that's going to be the biggest thing to teach you how to truly empathize and help someone. And number three, do not judge them, because you may see them doing something and you're thinking it's for one reason when it's for a completely different reason.
Mm-hmm.
We have one of our male clients. He can be very challenging to communicate with because he doesn't retain much, and the pattern of his psychosis is such that he believes he's caused every major catastrophe in the 20th century and 21st century, from Diana's death to the Kennedy assassination, space shuttle Challenger. And when they locked everything down here, the flower shops closed. Now, for most people, that won't be too much of an issue. But for him, the flower shop is just up the street. And part of his repetitive behaviors is to go and buy flowers and to lay them in his room to atone for every single bad thing he's done. So one of the young students that came in was like, what the hell's his problem? He's just, buying flowers. He's leaving them to rot in his room. Like, this is disgusting. This is filthy. And I had to have a very frank conversation and say, listen, this is what's going on. So before you come to a judgment, maybe just zip it, listen, and observe.
Yeah.
Because the suffering that this man's going through now, because he can't get access to those flowers, is really intense. Because now he believes he's caused COVID and is responsible for every death related to COVID.
It's horrifying.
Yeah.
I think Emily is saying something similar.
Yeah, exactly. Take direction. Number one, I mean, I've had clients, that have come from very wealthy and powerful connected families politically. I've had clients that, were once, teaching at prestigious universities, had, girlfriends, cottages, cars, money, wealth, walked into work wearing tinfoil one day and it went downhill from there. And this particular client, he can push my buttons. I don't mind saying that. And we've had such a long-term relationship that there's a give and take there. And that's the other key, developing relationships with folks. And one time, I just said, you know what? I'm really frustrated by you. I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. Tell me clearly. And in that moment, he had the most amazing moment of lucidity where he said, well, they took me away from my parents when I was young. I felt like I was being treated like a Nazi. I'm not a Nazi. They threw me in the hospital. They forced me with all these pills, and now I'm here. And that was the most lucid moment I have ever seen. I said, okay, so what can I do? And then from that moment, things got better.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a huge lesson for anybody.
Yeah.
Like mental health, unfortunately, we're kind of at the point with mental health right now where we were with AIDS in the early 80s, where there's still that stigma and we're only beginning to really talk about it. And my coworkers and I often say, it's probably going to be at least another 20 years before, unfortunately, we get the full acceptance and the full tools that we need to do the job.
Sure.
You don't think,
especially for what you're doing,
yeah,
very visible mental illness is even harder to try and.
Yeah, because it's not it's not sexy. Like
right.
Like I say to my coworkers, I don't work for a sexy charity. I'm not, hugging puppies and saving whales and, going off with Al Gore to do, planetary saving and all this stuff. I'm working with what most people see as the dirty old rambling idiot, mentally ill homeless guy on the park bench who's peed himself and can't get it together in his life. That's the fact.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of people see it. And it's unfortunate because behind every person like that you see, there's a hell of a story, and sometimes very painful.
When I'm out in public, and like the other day I was in the subway and I'm there sitting down, and then this guy, I walk in, I sit down, and this guy sitting across from me, I walked in and I kind of saw that he was like, there was something up. He was very disheveled, had, the typical bottle of alcohol in the plastic bag, in the brown bag, in the LCBO bag. So I sat down and I had my headphones on and I went straight to my phone. Well, he stood up and came right at me. So he was standing right in front of me. So I took off my headphones and I looked up. I was like, "Hey man, what's going on?" So I had a conversation with him. I was like, "Hey man, like what's going on?" He's like, "Man, he's like, this COVID stuff, blah blah blah. Like everyone's telling me to wear a mask." And I was like, "Yeah, man, like I hear what you mean. Like I hear what you're saying." And I was just being like cordial and kind of going with him and just letting him do his thing. And then he left. He got off his stop. I think he got off at like Heel or whatever. And the lady that was sitting like on the other side of me, so it was him, me, and then the other lady. She kind of like, he left, the doors closed, and she looked at me and goes like, why were you so nice to him? I'm like, was there any reason for me not to be nice to him?
Yeah. I used to get that all the time. Like one of my very favorite people on planet Earth was actually this homeless guy. And I'm just going to say his first name. His first name was Robert. He's passed, unfortunately. But he used to wear a Davy Crockett hat. And without fail, he would get on the streetcar every morning. And this is when I would do the overnight shifts. And he would bellow, "Let's talk about Shakespeare. Let's talk about Shakespeare." And I would go, "Oh, hey, Robert, come on, sit, let's talk Shakespeare." And the guy was actually a classically trained actor at some point and also taught English. And then, we would talk about that, and he would bellow, of course, because that was his way.
Yeah.
And then afterward, he would say, "By the way, I am the first president of the Second Republic of the United States and heir to the throne of Russia as its czar. Don't forget it. See you tomorrow." Get off. And yes.
Talk about a sign off.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And God bless him. I mean, he was great fun. And, sometimes you'd see him lounging out in front of the coffee shop looking for change. And I would never give him change because I knew he had a terrible drinking problem previously. I would go back to it. And he was very forthwith about it. And I'd be like, "You know what, Robert, I'm not going to give you change. I am going to buy you a coffee, so stay put." And often that was enough.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think Emily Chambers keeps bringing up excellent points in the chat.
Yeah.
And I think this was something I was trying to discuss earlier. Maybe I don't think I put it as succinctly as she did. She put it very well here, was that having an illness it does create its own trauma.
It certainly does. I see it with our folks every day. I mean, and it really pisses me off sometimes when I see it, because you're not going to stigmatize somebody with cancer. You're not going to stigmatize somebody with AIDS, at least not anymore. You're not going to stigmatize somebody who, had a horrible car wreck and now lost a limb, unfortunately, right?
Unfortunately, there is some of that too. There is some of the stigmatizing of people with,
but it's very close. It's not as open. It's not as open, and therefore can be a bit more dangerous. But I mean, the problem with mental health is that often a lot of people, it just scares the living hell out of them. Like,
yeah, sure,
yeah.
or certain kinds of physical disability. I think
absolutely.
I think that's a thing, something that can cause a lot of anxiety for people who have to interact with people in public. What if you have a visible disability? That can be terrifying, or mental illness disability. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just at the end of the day, I mean, we all inhabit it, or excuse me, all inhabit planet Earth. We're all the same species.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us are suffering, some of us aren't at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
All it takes is for people to realize that, and hopefully, we get to a point where this will be a non-discussion at some point. Like,
11, yes, 11. It is the 11. Sorry.
I'm drinking the same thing, Ed.
Yeah.
I'm still on hibiscus tea right now because I just finished
nothing wrong with that
a while ago. So yeah, I mean, I'm really glad that you guys, came on and talked about this openly, because it's something that I would encourage anybody to do. Find somebody that you trust and just talk about it openly. It's the only way to do it.
For sure. I think that's something I know I was thinking about when Vita was talking, was, shared trauma builds the best friendships.
Yeah.
This is creepy. I don't care much for this. That sounds horrifying.
Yeah, Emily's in a weird spot, I think.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I do want to say, I know Floyd looks like Floyd was saying, just everyone's looking for someone to interact with. And especially if you're socially anxious, or you have mental illness, or even if you just don't feel like you belong, you feel like you miss out on that really important social cohesion, right? I mean, and that's a debilitating thing, right?
Yeah. I think the best way of kind of putting it into perspective for people that don't suffer from any sort of mental illness is think of the fact that all of your social options have been taken away.
Right.
And imagine that actuality being your thought process every day.
Yep. 24/7, 365. Yep.
This social distancing thing, and having no options, like, oh, I want to go out to a restaurant tonight. Oh, I can't. Yep. Like that thing right there is what a lot of people that suffer from a lot of mental illnesses think about is their process every day.
Yep.
Yeah. For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I do want to say, I want to thank everybody for coming on. I do think I'm going to start finishing up this stream. Even though we've kind of only scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more to talk about here. And actually, I'm wondering if people want, I don't think this is going to be a rocket review thing, but I may start putting stuff up on my alt channel. Not to try and build up the channel. It's not going to be like a big fucking YouTube thing. But if people would like that, if you feel like you want to come talk about stuff over there, if you want to reach out to me on Facebook at O'Mara, I'm happy to friend anybody.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot more conversations to be had here.
Yeah. It's something that never gets, it'll never get tiring, and it'll never get old. It'll always be relevant to somebody out there. And if you're talking about it, it's relevant to you.
Yeah. And please, if anyone is out there who, I want to thank everyone who's contributed in the chat, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Thank you guys who came on screen.
Thank you, Ed.
If there's anybody out there who's watching, who's not talking in the chat, or who didn't want to come on stream, who's feeling any kind of bad way, who wants to talk, right? You can reach me at, I'm going to put it in the chat, the Rut Gut Review at Gmail. Please feel free to reach out at any time. Yeah, I don't. I know in the past I have not always been. I feel like there have been times when I was in my pain body. You're right. That's what we always called it. When I was in my pain body, when I was not as friendly with people who needed my help as I should have been, and I wish I had been. So if anybody is looking for someone to talk to, please don't hesitate to reach out.
That's a whole nother conversation too. Not to cut you off, but like we talked about it really quickly. I'm gonna keep this really quick. We talked about it really quickly at the beginning of the stream when we were saying we don't know what mental illness is until it happens to us. Well, we're not empathetic to mental illness until it happens to us. So like for me, going back is like I was mean to this person, I was mean to this person, I was mean to this person, or I wasn't not even mean, just I was unempathetic to their struggles or what they were feeling at the time. And now looking back on it from a different lens point, it's like, well, shit. And that's why, like, I try to be as friendly as possible to everybody that I meet, even people on this, like, in the subway that are clearly like troubled, and no one wants to go near them. It's like, hey, man, sure, yeah, 100%, just something, right? So, empathy, guys, empathy.
Yeah, for sure. And yes, as self-care, we do need to talk about self-care. That's something I was thinking about when you were talking about your work.
Hi.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about it too.
Yeah.
Because
for sure.
sometimes after I've done a 12-hour shift and you've had, a couple of crises, sometimes you just got to unplug from the world. I find for me, it's helpful just to unplug from the world for a bit and just be in my own space.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah. Other people find it helpful, to go out and do things. Whereas, I'll open a book, I'll light a cigar, pour a scotch, and I'm good for about 4 hours. And that's what I need.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's another thing I would love to talk about, like secondary trauma, compassion fatigue.
Yep.
I do think I'm going to, if we can I would love to have people on another stream. I don't think we're going to do it necessarily on Rock Gut. We may do it on the other channel. So, but I would love to have people come talk about this stuff in the future.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry if I interrupted you, Vito.
I don't remember what I was going to say now.
That happens to me all the time.
Yeah, I don't remember what I was going to say. Shit. God damn it, ADHD.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Okay.
That or craft diseases, we call it at work.
Oh, no, now I remember. And self-help and unwindingness after work. That's what Rock Gut and Cast Strength are here for Thursday nights.
For sure.
Gotta plug those channels.
Yeah. And I do want to say special thank you to Emily Chambers. I think Emily Chambers and Wheels, I really want to thank you guys for talking about your perspective as disabled people, as physically disabled people. That is not something I'm aware of enough. So I appreciate that immensely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, I would think we're going to call it a night. I just saw King Jack just hop in the chat. Sorry, buddy. But I think we do have to call it a night. I got to get up for work. I want to thank everybody who came in.
Can I plug really quick?
Of course you can.
Cast Strength After Dark is going on right now over on Cast Strength. Some nonsense and silliness is happening, I think. So when Ed finishes off, I'm gonna hop back over there. So if anyone wants some real sort of distraction,
yeah, for sure. All right.
Shirts might come off. Who knows?
I may sit tonight out, but you guys have a good time. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. And until next time, stay sane, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and stay rotten.
Cheers.